You guys overwhelmed us with Snyder Cut questions, so we are doing a mailbag episode right now. Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing director here at CinemaBlend, back with another Snyder Cut weekly series. I am joined this week by Hannah Saulic because we are doing a massive mailbag episode trying to answer the questions that you guys brought in, and so I need Hannah's help. Hi Hannah, how are you doing?
I'm good, Sean. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So you're going to be taking over the questions and shooting them past me so that I can try to share whatever type of knowledge that I have.
Yes. And just to clarify for all the viewers out there, I am the person that is producing behind the scenes all of these episodes that you've seen from a weekly basis. So I'm not just like this rando person hopping in on Sean's Snyder Cut.
She's making all the amazing edits that you guys are enjoying week to week. So all credit to Hannah.
Aw, thanks. All right, so I tried to organize all these questions into little chunks. So for viewers, when you're watching this on YouTube, everything should be nicely laid out in the description if you want to hop around to different sections. A lot of people are curious about what's going on with all this additional photography, talk, and rumors. So first question that I want to clarify, because I think when we put out our video last week about the additional photography, this was still kind of a question that was left in the air a little bit, still might be, but is Henry Cavill returning for additional photography?
Yeah, that's a great question, because he sort of did a bait and switch when talking with Collider that he said he is not coming back for any of the additional photography. And I'm going to choose to believe, again, this is just my thought on it, total speculation. I think that he was deceiving Collider to sort of keep the wraps on the fact that they are going to have additional photography. This was a story that was sort of breaking over the course of a couple of days, with the Hollywood Reporter coming out to say that additional photography was going to take place. None of us really knew the extent of what the additional photography was going to be, and some of that was due to the fact that we didn't know what the budget was going to be for it, and we didn't know if COVID was going to allow Zack to get people back together to shoot what he needs to shoot. All of that stuff sounds like it's going to be happening, and he has said on that film slate that he gave to Victor Koo that he's going to be doing additional scenes with Batman, Lois, Superman, and Martian Manhunter. And so if he says Superman, I'm going to assume that Henry is part of it. Also, I think most of the stuff that got butchered in the theatrical cut was Henry's scenes.
Yes, ma'am.
So if Zack needs him back to restore some of the stuff that might have gone wrong, although Zack had his ideas for what he was going to do with Henry in the first place, he might need Henry to come back and film some of that stuff. We could also say that if Zack is going to be filming a continuation and setting up some future stories, he may be wanting to set up future stories that involve Superman, and so he would need Henry to sort of film something different than what he did do in 2016, 2017, and allow them to sort of tease out a direction that they might want to go should the Snyderverse continue on HBO Max.
That farmer's dream is all some people have.
Okay, so next question about additional photography that we answered, just so everybody knows, in a video last week that I will put a link to in the description, and it should pop up here. But let's just quickly kind of recap for people who don't want to jump over to that in-depth video. What do you think is the most likely thing that Zack is going to be shooting during this additional photography week?
Okay, so in that video that you referenced, I mentioned that I believed Zack was going to be filming a conclusion, so that the 2017 version of his story that was going to be coming out was going to have an open-ended tease to a Justice League Part 2, which was always part of the slate, that it was going to be teasing out other spin-off movies, which at the time would have included Ben Affleck's Batman film. And I thought that since those things aren't necessarily happening the way that they were guaranteed to happen in 2017, that Zack would need to come up with some other type of finale. However, there's a number that surfaced over the course of us reporting on this that leads me to believe that that might not necessarily be the case. So I'm going to backtrack on my predictions a little bit, and that's the $70 million budget. And again, I'm not 100% sure where that's being confirmed. All of these numbers, like studio math, is super bizarre, and nobody really wants to put anything out there with any concrete evidence. But the number you're hearing now is $70 million given to the reshoots. And you don't give $70 million to close off a project. Like, that's
psychotic.
There are mid-level movies that get made for less than $70 million. So $70 million for reshoots says to me that HBO Max is investing very heavily in the Zack Snyder interpretation of the DC universe, and that leads me to believe that they're going to figure out some way to continue it. So yes, I know last week I said that he's likely filming a conclusion. That made a lot of sense to me because this was always a one and done to get Zack to deliver his cut of Justice League. But it's starting to feel more and more like HBO Max recognizes the value of DC as a brand. They like the story that Zack is putting together. They would like for him to continue telling it, and that they're investing that money into him exploring future chapters. So we shall see.
I love it. I love bringing people together.
Okay, so we'll get into the continuation of Zack Snyder's story a little bit later, but somebody did have a follow-up question, just assuming that like this is a one and done sort of thing. So Andrea24976-180 wants to know, if Snyder could only conclude this third movie, do you think the ad photography are about scenes that could close the Snyder saga as a trilogy? In this case, we'll also see a real clash with DARKSEID to get the feeling of a more complete closure. Oh, that's a question. Do you think we'll also see a real clash with DARKSEID?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I just don't think that that's possible, because to add anything additional at that scale would mean several more scenes that would need to be included in order to ramp up to what we're going to get. I still believe, even watching the trailer for the Snyder Cut that was released during DC Fandom, that you're going to get essentially the same structure that was presented in the theatrical cut, just in a much better quality. There's certain things that have to take place over the course of the material that Zack shot. Bruce has to go out and recruit the League. He's got to introduce himself to characters like Barry Allen. He's got to go recruit Jason Momoa in the Icelandic town where he goes to see them. We have to see Cyborg's story play out, and all that stuff is going to take time. I still think the confrontation at the end of the movie is going to be between the League and Steppenwolf, so to get to a point where you're including more DARKSEID material would really lead to significant additional photography, and I'm not quite sure that Zack's going to get the chance to do that. That's like tacking on at least half of another movie. And I know that we're going from a 214-minute cut to to 4 one-hour series segments, but I don't think Zack has enough of that material in the raw footage that he's going to use to complete the 4-hour cut. And I think that would have to be teases for additional stuff to come.
So speaking of the 214 cut, R2G-Man wants to know, since Zack is getting $70 million for his current version of Justice League, which is much more expansive than the 214, obviously, how much money do you think his 214 cut needed, or was it basically done?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think it was basically done, because when he walked away from it, he still had several months of post-production left to go on it. He left in May. It was due to come out in November, and for anyone who sort of tracks blockbusters like that, they work until the very last week, essentially, before they're coming out, putting together that type of stuff. Now, again, that's hard to put a price tag on, because special effects and the work that goes into those teams is really hard to quantify how much those people earn, but I don't think it's anywhere near $70 million. You know, for a while there was a $20 million price tag tease, there was a $40 million price tag tease. That math has been all over the place. I would probably put it at half of what the $70 million is that he's getting right now, but the cut that existed, the 214, when he walked away from it, I think needed not significant work, but it needed a decent amount of VFX work that, because I know the people who did get a chance to see that version, friends of his behind the scenes, even I think Kevin Smith was talking to people who had worked on that, said it's still heavy previs, a lot of green screen work, some sketch work put in there as well too to fill in some gaps, and all of that would have been digitally painted in by wizards getting ready for the November 17th release date in 2017 if Zack was able to stay on. But to put a number on that, like from a budget standpoint, it's really difficult.
Understandable. All right, so this next chunk of questions is really all about story speculation. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So Superman fan P wants to know, do you think there will be any other surprise characters showing up in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
It depends on what you mean by surprise. Like, we pretty much know that Martian Manhunter is going to show up. We're going to get to see Zack's version of that character. Green Lantern is largely expected to show up. There's the Ryan Reynolds rumor circling back around again, and I still listen. I'm gonna go to my grave choosing not to believe that that's gonna happen. If it comes true, I will be the first one to tell you how incredibly wrong I am, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So I don't know if those two characters count as yeah, thank you. I don't know if those two characters count as surprises. Those would be the ones that I would expect to see. DARKSEID was another one who was heavily rumored and showed up in that trailer, so that kind of took that surprise off of it. Trying to think who else might be. Well, Kevin Costner is expected to sort of come back in a cameo, but that might be an under the radar type hope for a lot of people, that he might be in the cornfield when Superman gets resurrected and returns back home. He might get a scene with Pa Kent before he reunites with Lois and Martha in that hug that we got to see in the trailer. So those are the three that I think would be sort of on the radar, but still pretty surprising to see them show up.
Something, isn't it?
Next up, speaking of Green Lantern, Ken Kairu, and I apologize if I'm butchering names because I'll probably do that a lot throughout this video, says Green Lantern in Zack's cut. Is it just a small cameo, or will he unite the Seven and fight Steppenwolf in the final battle? Or is he just a conspiracy? If not, what's your screen time estimate for him? Plus, is it true that Manhunter will appear in his Martian form for a couple of seconds only?
Okay, so yes, I think Martian Manhunter for a couple of seconds. I think Green Lantern, not for very long. I would be very surprised if he's part of the final battle. Now, if you want to lead to some speculation about how it's possible that he might show up in the final confrontation, we can talk about the fact that in this DC Fandom trailer, there are not a lot of scenes shown from the final confrontation. And one of the shots that Zack chooses to show is Black Suit Superman punching Steppenwolf. Like when you see Batman with the parademons, that's from the earlier underneath Gotham Harbor. There is a moment where the Batmobile sort of is getting attacked by parademons. That's from the final confrontation. There are shots from the earliest trailers that still show the blue-silver hue that Joss decided to saturate with red and orange. For whatever reason, you see a lot of scenes of the League sort of fighting the parademons and uniting in that bit. But I don't think that there's a lot of room for a Lantern to show up there without it needing a lot of explanation. Like without this character sort of showing up in the League being like,
who's that?
And I don't think Zack built that in for himself. If you see a tease of a Lantern, I think it's going to be during the history lesson. Where you'll see the Lanterns were part of the initial battle to keep the mother boxes from DARKSEID and Steppenwolf. Because a lot of the footage that was in theatrical after the battle, like Bruce buying the farmhouse for the Kents to essentially hold on to. When you talk about Wonder Woman and Batman putting the League together, or a room for the League to be, these are wiggle room areas that I think Zack has some freedom to do his own either teasing or closure. We have to decide which one he's going to be able to do. And in there, I think, is where you might find some Lantern references or footage, but I'm not quite sure if he has an actor on hand yet ready to play a Green Lantern, because we're still debating which Green Lantern it would be. Like, would it be Jon Stewart? Would it be Hal Jordan? These are questions that we don't 100% know. I think Zack has said he wants it to be Hal, or that if he does a Green Lantern, it will be Hal. But I'm not 100% sure if that's confirmed. If he has said that, please tell me in the comments below, because I'd like to know that for sure.
Do you think that Green Lantern is in sort of like Zack Snyder's 5-part saga story plan somewhere, or do you think not really?
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, I think he wants the ability to include that character, for sure. But it is odd when you talk about the 5-film arc, and when he's let speculation sort of run rampant about how that happens, he's never discussed, as far as I know, how he would pull in the origin of the Lantern Corps. Again, that's a pretty significant origin story. Like, Aquaman has his own spin-off movie, but that came after the fact. You do get a big chunk of Flash's origin story in what we're going to find out is the Snyder Cut. A lot of talk about Barry and how he got his powers and how he's sort of learning to use them. You're going to get a lot from Cyborg. It doesn't leave room for the Lantern Corps, for Hal Jordan to have an origin story.
Unless it's Ryan Reynolds.
Good Lord. It's true. That is very true. But, yeah, no.
I hate myself for bringing that up. I'm sorry. Okay, back to fan questions. CHADAM, with like 4 exclamation points, wants to know, with rumors of Martian Manhunter appearing, do you think we'll see a fight scene between the Justice League and Martian Manhunter, like in the Justice League 2011 series that a lot of the DCEU is based off of?
I'm afraid not. Again, I'm going on record as saying the Martian Manhunter cameo will simply be when Martha is leaving her meeting with Lois, and she will briefly turn into Martian Manhunter and then turn back again into General Swanwick, and it will just be a tease that Zack would have included to say, hey, this character is part of this universe. I will use him later, and hopefully, I hope he gets a chance to still do it. The confrontation that we're going to get is Superman versus the League, which played out in Memorial Park, and you saw it in theatrical. You're going to see a much better version of it in Zack's version, but that fight will still be there.
Fury Firestorm wants to know, as Zod's body appeared and utilized to create Doomsday in BVS, do you think Zoodsday will play any part in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
That's a good question. I don't know, but I'm going to say no. I think he got the most out of Doomsday, and he has plenty of other characters and material to get through that bringing back Doomsday in any way, shape, or form might be counterproductive. Although, we don't know 100% how they're going to do the resurrection scene. I am guessing that's going to be completely different than how it plays out in theatrical. And Zack, listen, adores the mythology of the Kryptonians, and he has a Kryptonian ship, and he does have Zod's body, and he has a lot of things to play with. So his version of the resurrection scene could play out a little bit that way. So this is not off the table. That's a really good question.
You want Zod's body? Okay.
The Real Husain wants to know, two of the biggest questions on my mind, also ones I've been trying to ask Zack about over on Vero, are one, are we getting the version that was deemed too scary and Zack and Terrio had to do rewrites? Do you want to take that first and then I'll give you the second question?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think you're going to get that in the Snyder Cut, but if they are able to go forward, that's what you're going to end up getting. I think him and Terrio were basically just mapping out a plan of where they would have to go, because they knew that if they were going to start teasing certain things, and they started teasing those things as far back as BVS, when you had Flash time traveling back to meet up with Bruce. So you need a payoff for that. And Zack did talk about in Pasadena that they would have this moment later in future films where Bruce is talking to Barry about where he can jump back to, that there's 2 points in time that he can jump back to. And when he mentions one of them, he will essentially say, like, no, you already jumped there and it didn't work. Like, I saw you. That was in BVS. So that's Zack and Chris Terrio planning that stuff out. I don't think you're going to get that in this Snyder Cut. It's just a matter of, will he be able to tease out the direction that he still wants to go? And if Zack is going to continue and tell this 5-story arc, I don't think he's going to change that much. He's getting the referendum to go back and restore his vision. So all of that stuff will still be in play. He might regret the fact that he teased out some of those story points, because now fans are really anticipating them. And if he as an artist has come up with some different ideas and wants to sort of change the direction he's going in, he's painted himself into a corner slightly. I think his fans will give him the benefit of the doubt if he wants to change the direction. But that scary stuff, the darker elements, they will be, I believe, in future stories, and not necessarily in this Snyder Cut, but they could be teased in the material that we're getting in the 4-hour cut.
Okay, I lied. I'm going to jump to a different question that relates to this before I finish the second part of the Real Husain's question. So at Jupic says, what are your theories on the original JL script? Scary idea Zack and Terrio had to rewrite. What do you think it was about?
Oh, well, so I think it was about DARKSEID essentially finding a way to come to our planet, and Zack has teased out a couple of things that he wanted to do in that script, which was, spoiler alert, the death of Lois Lane. And the death of Lois Lane was going to send Superman down that dark side, which would lead to, no pun intended with the dark side, which would lead to the version of Superman that we saw in the BVS Knightmare sequence, where he hates Batman and blames him for taking away everything that was the most important thing to him, which would be Lois. And Zack did say at the Pasadena event at SnyderCon that the moment that Bruce was going to have to time travel back to would be to get back to the Batcave to prevent DARKSEID from killing Lois Lane. So these are things that Zack had planned out in his mind. Now, I don't think he got so far into his filming of all of this stuff, but this was what's on his radar. So do I like that script? Hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say till you see it all play out. That is super dark. That would be a devastating loss. And, you know, we saw the death of Superman in BVS. We're going to see the death of some key characters in Snyder Cut. Silas Stone, for one of them. We saw him sort of get phased out as he's trying to protect Victor with the Mother Box. We saw the death of Pa Kent in Man of Steel. Like, Zack's not afraid to kill off major characters, but they're always for the importance of moving the story forward, and so the sacrifice of Lois would be pretty major. I know that there's that fantastic graphic that supposedly maps out Zack's 5-film arc. I probably should have wore that t-shirt today. And the very bottom of it is a baby that is supposed to be Clark and Lois's child that they're going to name Bruce because Bruce Wayne eventually sacrifices himself if we get that far down the story arc. So there's a lot to get to and a lot of story to tell, but right now it seems to be in the notes scratched on a pad phase, and hopefully Zack gets a chance to continue.
Awesome. All right, going back to the second part of the Real Husain's question. Apologies.
Oh, cool.
He said, do you think we'll get some kind of prologue / recap type thing at the beginning of episode 1? I think that might be a good idea for those who aren't fully aware of why we're getting another version of the JL.
I don't think you will. I think Zack is going to kind of trust the fact that you've kept up with everything that sort of happened. And from what we've all been hearing, the Snyder Cut is going to open with not a prologue or a recap kind of thing, but you'll see the death of Superman from the perspective of Lois Lane, essentially, which plays a little bit off of what we saw in BVS, where you saw the end of Man of Steel, but through the eyes of Bruce Wayne, and now he's on the ground in Metropolis and looking up and seeing these gods create all sorts of devastation. Now you're going to see Superman's sacrifice at the hands of Doomsday, but through Lois's eyes. And some of that is hinted at in the DC Fandom trailer again, too. When you see Superman letting out that scream, Zack has hinted about the fact that that Superman scream is what awakens the Mother Boxes in the first place to get the story of Justice League moving forward. So I'm sure that that's the only kind of recap you're going to get. Like, hey, do you remember that time Superman sacrificed himself? That was at the end of BVS. However, if you're watching these videos, you probably watch BVS on a weekly basis. Many of you do it on a Sunday afternoon. I see your Twitter feeds. And so you do not have to be reminded how BVS ended. And you are very excited for Zack Snyder's version of Justice League to kick off. But if you don't happen to watch those movies that often, I would highly suggest watching Man of Steel and BVS before you go into episode 1 of Justice League on HBO Max.
The ultimate edition of BVS, correct?
Oh, that goes without saying.
You should specify that for non-Snyder diehard fans.
Fair enough.
We know better now, don't we?
At Bat Kilmer wants to know, I know Zack has said his Justice League is its own universe, but do you think they'll canonize it given the attention it's getting?
No, I don't think so. I think if Zack has used the term Elseworld, and he wants it to sort of exist separate from the canon that's going on in the DCEU. And this is, I can point to a quote that Zack gave me for the book that I'm writing on this Snyder Cut movement. And cheap plug, it's called Release the Snyder Cut. It's available for pre-sale right now.
I'll put a link down in the description.
Hey, thanks, Hannah. He has said he actually loves the fact that it's disconnected from the DCEU and that it can be its own thing and try crazy things that don't disrupt the ongoing continuity of what they're trying to do on the theatrical side. He told me personally that the weight of expectation that comes with having to juggle all the different storylines and not just focus on your individual story was exhausting. And he's really happy to not be part of that anymore. So no, I don't think that what he does in here is going to be canon. And that's weird because Ezra Miller, Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot, they're all still moving forward as part of other storylines. And I think that fans are going to have to sort of pay attention to the fact that what's happening in the Snyderverse is disconnected from what's happening in the DCEU. Although the only wild card with that is that Flash movie and the multiverse, and that could just sort of literally put a spin a roulette wheel that sends things off in all different directions, and it might justify the reason that we have the existence of a Snyderverse. So we'll see how that all plays out. But no, I don't think this stuff that we're seeing in the Snyderverse is going to be considered as canon. I think it's truly separate, and Zack is happy that way.
Do you think fans are going to have a hard time with that? Not necessarily like the diehard Snyder fans, but just casual superhero fans are going to be really bothered by the fact that it doesn't necessarily connect to the Aquaman sequel coming up and the Wonder Woman sequel coming up.
Sure, because fans get upset by everything, essentially. They'll either think it's really cool, that you're getting actors who can do different interpretations of the characters. Like Jason Momoa could do something totally different with James Wan versus what he's doing in the Snyderverse. I think we're sophisticated enough to sort of figure that out, but, people look for reasons to get upset about anything. We're going to have a Ben Affleck Batman, we're going to have a Michael Keaton Batman, and we're going to have a Robert Pattinson Batman all at one time. So if we can manage that, I think we can manage having a Snyderverse that's just doing its own thing on HBO Max.
Agreed.
What's next?
Devin Wagner wants to know, he said, Zack has stated that Wonder Woman isn't around during the Knightmare timeline. What's your best guess on where she is? Deceased?
Whew, that's a good question. Would Zack kill off Wonder Woman? That would be pretty bold. She's one of the strongest characters in this universe. It would take an awful lot to remove her. I know people were zooming in on that shot going over the decimated Hall of Justice in the Knightmare sequence, and Wonder Woman's shield is there and it's broken. That's a big step to go with deceased. I don't know, because we don't see Aquaman, but we do see his trident. The only two people we've seen in the Knightmare sequence so far have been Batman and Superman. Superman has had that sort of army of parademons that are working for him. I'm not going to go so far to say as Wonder Woman's deceased. The Knightmare sequence almost reminds me a little bit of the Flashpoint universe, which is an Armageddon existence of our current world. And in the Flashpoint sequence, the heroes of the Justice League were just off fighting different battles in different places, and Wonder Woman was actually locked in a lethal battle with Aquaman. The Atlanteans and the Amazonians were in a conflict, and so I'm going to choose to believe naively that she's just part of that. I don't think that she's necessarily dead, and I think the Knightmare sequence that we're going to get in the Snyder Cut, although this isn't confirmed, is largely going to revolve around Cyborg interacting with the Mother Boxes and sort of seeing an alternate future that could happen if they let Darkseid and Steppenwolf succeed. So you may get touches of where Cyborg is in this one, but I think it's still going to be rooted pretty heavily in Batman and Superman.
You know, it's true what they say about little boys, born with no natural inclination to share.
Corey Hobbs Echo wants to know, if the Snyder Cut ends up being a one and done, which I hope it won't be, how will Superman's story arc continue? If he ends up in the black suit at the end of the film, how will Henry Cavill's Superman's solo outings get him back to the red and blue suit?
That's a great question. And I'm going to go back through my memory because I am pretty sure that Zack has discussed something to do, like he knows that there has to be a physical transition. There's something that's going to trigger the transition from the black and silver suit to the red and blue. And I want to say that he thinks the red and blue has something to do with hope. And that there's going to be something that takes place over the course of his movie to restore that hope in the character. But he definitely shows him in the black suit in the final confrontation with Steppenwolf. So again, we're getting into that sort of wiggle room of the scenes that come after the confrontation. And you know, whenever we get in a superhero movie, like once you get through with the final fight, there's always these scenes that in some movies exist to tease what else is coming. In most movies, they work as closure for the story that you've been watching. And so in there, we might get something that shows how and why Superman is able to sort of go back to the blue and red. It's something that could come to fruition in Snyder Cut. It might just be something as simple and easy as he goes back to the Kryptonian ship and there's a pod that has the suit in it. I mean, there's ways to do it 100% for sure. Because we do see in that deleted scene, there's a moment where Clark is going through the Kryptonian ship and he sees in a pod the black suit. So, you know, that exists and can be pulled in. Some people have also said that the final scene in theatrical cut of Henry unbuttoning his shirt and running is still a Zack scene. And if that's the case, that's the red and blue that's underneath him. However, when we saw the deleted scene of Superman arriving at Alfred's garage in the on the DVD, it was red and blue. But then when Zack brought it back, it was black and silver. So this seems like an easy thing for him to fix in post. And I am going to believe that Zack will figure out some way to get Henry back into the red and blue before the Snyder Cut is over. That's my guess.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. At Hardboiled Films asks, or says, a few months ago, Zack confirmed for At Ping Pong Flicks and myself that the film will have Diana and Lois interacting. Considering how Diana clearly, and for obvious reasons, feels for Lo in BVS as Clark dies, how much interaction will you say we'll get here and throughout the arc?
That's a really good question also. I'm trying to think of a scene where it might happen. Because we haven't seen any sort of sequences where Amy Adams' Lois Lane would be around Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. But the one scene where I think it might happen is during the confrontation in the park. If you think back to theatrical, Lois Lane was the secret weapon that Batman had to bring out when it was time to sort of subdue Superman because the League was not able to successfully do it. It always seemed a little bit forced or a little bit rushed, almost like that idea or that concept was something that Zack might have had, but then Joss handled it poorly. Like he did with almost everything else in the film. So there's an opportunity there for Lois Lane to show up at the park and to be part of the confrontation between the League and Superman, and Wonder Woman could potentially interact with Lois Lane at that point. But I don't see any other times throughout the course of that story when they would interact or have a reason to cross, because Lois wasn't a significant part of the story in Justice League. She and I don't know how much of that is by design, because Superman is dead and buried for the bulk of the film, and then after he's brought back, essentially has to go and work with the League to bring Steppenwolf down. The other place, I guess, where it could potentially show up is at the very beginning of the film. If we're seeing the death of Superman through Lois Lane's eyes, and she's definitely on scene when that confrontation happens, then you could get an interaction between Lois and Wonder Woman immediately following the death, where the two of them sort of seek solace in each other. But again, I'm not quite sure 100% where those two would get the opportunity to interact. I hope to see it. It'd be great to see those two characters cross paths, but I'm just not quite sure where it fits story-wise.
I just want a spin-off with the two of them. Everybody keeps talking about a backlash series. I'm like, no, give me Wonder Woman and Lois Lane, but like True Detective style.
I'm in.
That's what I want.
Sold, 100%, yes.
HBO Max, if you want to call me, I can help produce that. Thanks.
Showrunner.
Why aren't we covering this?
All right. Craig O'Donnell wants to know, based off what Zack said to you back in 2016 or 2017 at the set visit versus what he said to you or what you've heard him say, can you notice any stark differences, even with how he speaks about the movie or show?
It sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in that when he was putting the movie together in 2016, it was still part of a connected universe, and it still had to serve other masters. And that's a phrase that he used, that it was part of a larger team, that he was working in tandem with other filmmakers to make sure that none of their movies pulled too far off of the path that he was trying to go with his Justice League. And at that time, that was Patty Jenkins and David Ayer, who was working on the Suicide Squad movie, and there were a litany of directors who were coming through the Flash property, and him working with Ben to make sure that things that took place in Justice League didn't affect the Batman movie going too far forward. And all of those decisions and all of those other octopus tentacles that are pulling at your movie don't let you as a filmmaker just fully focus on your 2 to 3 hour movie that you're currently working on. So everything that he's saying now, to reiterate this again, is freedom from that larger machine that came with being part of a cinematic universe. He doesn't have that anymore. He's totally free to just focus on making this movie and this story the best it can possibly be. That's the biggest change that I've seen from 2016 to now, and I think that that's phenomenal for him as a creative storyteller.
Absolutely. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, this was probably the question that was asked the most.
Ooh.
People want to know what you're looking forward to most in Zack Snyder's Justice League, or if there are any moments that you hope to see between any of the characters.
Yeah, the return of Superman. Like, that was one of the biggest things that I thought got shortchanged tremendously in the theatrical cut. If you're going to take the bold swing of killing off Superman in your second movie of the Snyderverse, you know, at the time when I watched it, I thought, well, you're really hurrying to that, aren't you? Because that's a major storyline for Superman to face down Doomsday and to die. And it's not something that you do lightly. You deal with the ramifications of it and see where it goes as a story. Now, for Zack, that was the catalyst that got Bruce and Diana to get together and put the League back. But you went into it always wondering, like, okay, but how are you going to bring Superman back, and how significant is it going to be? There's a shot in the trailer of Superman hovering above the buildings and Lois turning to go look at him. And I get goosebumps just thinking about that, because that return should be really significant. It should be really triumphant, and it was played for laughs too often in the theatrical cut, with the League trying to confront him, and Cyborg's powers going wrong, and everything that looked bad about Henry's face, and yeah, awful, just awful. They mishandled it, and so I really want to see that character. Honestly, when you look at Zack's approach to these three movies, it's a Superman arc all the way through, and the other characters who are brought in because of their direct ties to Superman. Batman is deeply suspicious of this alien who's on our planet. Wonder Woman is coming in to help with the Doomsday attack, but is, fascinated by the arrival of Kal-El, this alien from another planet. The League is being assembled because Batman says we don't have Superman anymore, and that leaves our planet vulnerable. So they're all tied to him, and his arc should get a chance to play out. I guess that's why I'm wearing this shirt today. So the return of Superman to the top of the pyramid, where I think he belongs, belongs is one of the things I'm most looking forward to. The other is Flash. I've talked about this on the series too. Flash is one of my most enjoyable DC characters. I think that the way that Ezra and Zack are playing him is going to be so totally different than what you see in theatrical, and he's finally going to get the justice that he deserves. I think that he's a fun visual character, and Zack is one of the most dynamic visual filmmakers that we have right now. So the way that he's going to bring the Speed Force to life, the way that he's going to utilize the character is going to blow a lot of people's minds, because if they're used to what they got in theatrical, it's going to be like taking that watered down D- version and bringing them up to an A+ version, and I can't wait to see that happen.
Okay, so this next part, we have just a couple quick questions about some of the just like missing details. So Mock J Grimes wants to know, when do you think the full trailer will be released?
A lot of that depends on when the film is going to be coming to HBO Max. If it's first quarter, like we're hearing, then you might get like a Christmas trailer, like a December trailer that sets up when it's going to be coming. Like, let's say it's February or March, you'd probably see a December trailer. If it's not until the summertime, or God help us, the end of 2021, then there's plenty of opportunities for them to drop marketing. Zack has said, he always wanted to hold out for a Comic-Con tease. Imagine that it's a Q4 2021 release and we're back at San Diego Comic-Con. Zack could have a panel, that gets people excited for it. We really won't know until the release date. I hope to God we don't have to wait that long. I really hope that it's a release in first quarter, and maybe we get a great Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day trailer. Zack does a lot of stuff at Christmas. I remember last Christmas he shared a ton of really exciting Vero posts to get people excited for his version of what's to come. And that was even before we knew that the Snyder Cut was coming. So that Christmas week tends to be a lot of a flurry of activity on his social media, and I would not be surprised if you saw a trailer drop around that time.
So I'm not even going to try to say this person's name. But another question that we got was, when do you think that we could learn the actual release date for Zack Snyder's Justice League, or for that matter, what it's actually called?
Yeah, I honestly thought that information was going to be coming during DC Fandom. I don't know what's holding it up. It could be the reshoots. It could legitimately just be HBO Max trying to figure out where on their calendar they want to drop it. So this is a huge mystery, because there's no real event in between now and whenever it's going to drop. Unless if it's at Comic-Con and we're seeing it at the back of 2021, then we're all in for really impatient wait. But the thing is, Zack could create a wave of attention whatever day he decides to drop it. So I'm going to guess that we will know the date and the title by the end of this year, and that it will arrive shortly after. Because with the streaming services and HBO Max's history to date, they have a really short window between when they announce the project and when it arrives. So I'll lean on their precedent that they've set so far, that once they announce the date, it's going to arrive pretty quickly after that, because they don't need as much of a ramp up in terms of marketing. It's not like a major movie that gets announced several months or even a year in advance of it dropping. The streaming services move pretty quickly, and so I'm holding out for an announcement by the end of this year and an early first quarter arrival of Part 1.
Awesome. All right, RY wants to know, do you think we'll hear most of Hans Zimmer's scores in Zack Snyder's Justice League, such as Lex Luthor's theme and other similar themes used in BVS, or should we expect new themes from Junkie XL that isn't as dark as BVS's soundtrack?
I think you're going to get all new stuff from Junkie XL. I think the tone of Justice League was always meant to be more upbeat. Even by Zack's design, he wanted this to become more of the putting the team back together, making it more uplifting. I don't doubt that you're going to get references to Zimmer's score. You'll get a Wonder Woman theme. You'll get some of the Batman themes that Zimmer came up with. There'll be traces of it looped all the way through in places where they're appropriate, but I think Junkie XL has a brand new score that he's going to be bringing, and he did play a sample of that recently. You could hear it on his social media, so I would expect to hear all new music coming for this movie.
Angel Cortez wants to know, Sean, do you know if Snyder and the cast will do any press when the Snyder Cut gets released on HBO Max, or do you think it'll just get released?
God, I hope so. And Zack, if you would like a show to go on, there's a YouTube channel here dedicated to you and the Snyder Cut. I think they'll do some press. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And I would believe that Zack has his outlets handpicked, because there's media members that he trusts and several media members that he does not trust. He's very, very savvy in terms of his marketing. I've said this multiple times in the book and over the course of this series. Zack is a masterful showman when it comes to marketing. He has a very good grip on how to tease out his his products, and I don't doubt that he has something really cool planned. The thing about this, though, is that he is a marketing machine in and of himself, and he doesn't need the traditional sort of talk show appearances, feature-length articles in an Entertainment Weekly. Like, he generates all this buzz on his own. So if he legitimately wanted to just drop the Snyder Cut one week, I think it would do just as well as if he went through the Dog and Pony Show doing marketing. However, I do think he and the cast are going to get a chance to speak to a few outlets. And again, Zach, right here. I mean, just come on, join us.
I was going to say, I don't know anyone who would be more kind to the man than you.
Honestly.
And just genuinely interested and have good questions. I mean,
of course.
You've been, living in this for like every day for 3 years now? It's been 3 years.
It's been 3 years.
It's 2020.
Yes.
Other breaking news. Water. Wet.
But yeah, Zach, you have anything that you want to do on our channel.
This is a safe space. This is a safe space.
Absolutely.